Well, Gene has given us an incredible, extraordinary gift. He told me that he thought television was being wasted because the 1960s was rich with fodder for television stories. It was a turbulent time. Peaceful people demonstrating for equality were being assaulted by law enforcement officers with attack dogs and fire hoses. Another big issue, the Vietnam War, was dividing the country itself. People that were fiercely supporting the war and others supporting peace. And that's what Star Trek was about, to inspire people to act, not just to sit. And that's what the kind of audience that we were able to attract. Most TV shows, you sit and absorb entertainment and it ends there. But Star Trek was a show that made people think and then act. Activism was what made Star Trek singular in terms of comparison with other television shows. I was a student at UCLA in the theater arts department. I was taking a shower and I vocalized in the shower and the phone wasn't ringing. So I stopped singing and turned the water off. And my agent told me he's got an interview for me. He called it a sci-fi thing. And so he gave me the information. I scribbled it down and I had dribbled water over the sheet of paper. The ballpoint note that I wrote kind of smeared. I went to Desilu, and I found the bungalow, and there was a woman at a desk, and that name tag read D.C. Fontana. She was a receptionist at that time. I said, I'm here to see Mr. Roddenberry, and she said, it's Roddenberry, and that got me, you're nervous anyway, and then to discover that I had mispronounced the producer, writer, creator's name got me really nervous. And I waited there for a while. Then she said, Mr. Roddenberry is ready to see you now. And so I walked in. They usually stay seated, but he came up and shook my hand. He said, so you're George Takei, aren't you? And I said, oh my goodness, I mispronounced your name out there, and you have mispronounced mine. But it's really pronounced Takei. And then he said, oh, I'm sorry. What does Takei mean? And I told him, Takei in Japanese means expensive. And he said, oh my goodness, a producer doesn't like to call an actor expensive. And so we began our relationship with mutually mispronouncing each other's name. And he sat there, he described to me the show. It's placed 300 years in the future, and it's got a philosophy behind it. The story takes place aboard this starship. That's a metaphor for planet Earth. And the crew is made up to reflect the various people on planet Earth. Different cultures, different languages, different societies, different races, and we have wars going on. But in this future society, we've gone past that. And we've found that the diversity working together can be our strength, each contributing our own perspective, our own talent, our own background and experiences. And the starship will be able to function that much more efficiently and that much more successfully. It was an exciting idea, and I was auditioning for the Asian part, and I desperately wanted to do that part because it was a wonderful opportunity to be a series regular. I'd been doing one-shots, and this is a series meant continuity of employment on a very personal basis. But the larger message, the philosophy of the show, was one that to me was really exciting, what I really believed in, and I desperately wanted to be cast. The suspense was killing, but the word came through. I'm cast. They're going to send a script, and that we will be filming not at Desilu in Hollywood, but at Desilu Culver in Culver City. And this was for the second pilot, where no man has gone before. I was excited by the idea, and I was excited by the opportunity to play an Asian role without being saddled with an accent or stereotypes. He was a member of the leadership crew on the bridge of the Enterprise. It was a thrilling opportunity. And now the next hope was for it to sell. And sure enough, we got the word that it did sell. We all got together this time at Desilu Studios in Hollywood to have the cast reading in that office with Gene as the maestro. Occasionally, Gene would come onto the set, and he's a very friendly guy. He would plunk himself down on the chair in between shots, and we just generally chit-chat. And he would also manage to slip in some guidance there. And I learned about the challenge he had giving my Asian character his name, and it revealed to me the depth with which he explored the characters that he was creating. The character was to represent Asia. Asia is a huge hunk of this planet that encompasses a lot of different countries, different cultures, and different histories. And the histories was a turbulent history. He didn't want to bring that part, the inability to work together, or introducing the idea of imperialism, colonization, rebellion, etc. So he said he had a map of Asia pinned on his wall, and he saw that off the coast of the Philippines is the Sulu Sea, and he thought the waters of a sea touch all shores. And that's how he came up with this neutral name, Sulu. I respected him for all those thoughts. He thought deeply about the characters, the use of metaphor to make a commentary on our society. We had invested a lot of ourselves in the show, and we were hoping that it would continue. You know, at the beginning of each episode, we announced that we were boldly going on a 5-year mission. But we discovered that it wasn't the Klingons that are the real adversary of our living long and prospering. It was the NBC programming executives. They canceled us. And so activism was what saved us for a 3rd season. We got activist fans who organized. Bijo Trimble is a name that immediately comes to mind. She mounted a massive letter writing campaign, which saved us for a 3rd season. Those activists were also visible in the Vietnam marches and some of the civil rights movement. But I thought eventually we'll go into syndication. As it happened, because we were low rated throughout our existence, the syndication fees were cheap. Stations discovered that they had a lot of time to fill, and they can fill it cheaply with Star Trek 5 nights a week. And what that also did was keep the stone rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger. Our fans started to grow. It had exploded so dramatically that there was talk that we might get revived as a television series. And as a matter of fact, they gave us a start date, and as we started getting closer to that date, it started to get soft and slippery, and it slipped, and eventually it faded. Our hopes were raised briefly. Walter was the one that was calling me, keeping me updated. Walter talked about the animated series reviving Star Trek, at least in animation. However, he also had the information that it didn't include us, Walter, me, Nichelle, and that Jimmy would be doing all the male voices other than Bill and Leonard's lines, and Majel will be doing Uhura's lines. It was shattering, but the extraordinary thing I discovered about an extraordinary man. When Leonard learned that Walter, Michelle, and I were eliminated and that others would be doing our voices, Leonard said, just a minute, this show is about diversity and finding our strength in our diversity. The two people that most personify diversity on the show are Nichelle and George. And if they're not going to be with the show, then I'm not interested in doing it. I thought it was an extraordinary stance for another actor to take on principle at his cost. And Nichelle and I were brought back, but Walter was not. So that was the unhappy thing about our not being really together. But throughout my relationship with the Star Trek, I had a growing respect and admiration and love for Leonard. He is an extraordinarily principled man, and with the guts to stand by his principles. Leonard is an incredibly good, devoted, and loyal friend. This is thanks to Gene. The fact that I have friends like Leonard, and Jimmy was a great friend. He was my best drinking buddy. Jimmy was the one who educated me on Chateau Neuf de Pape and Glenfiddich. In one of those sessions, he said, I'm becoming world famous as a Scotsman, but to tell the truth, I'm Irish. And an Irish Canadian at that, from Vancouver. But, he said, I've drunk enough of the libation of Scotland to qualify playing an authentic Scotsman. Jimmy was a great guy, and I loved him too. For me, of all the movie series, the proudest, most joyful, and most fulfilling was Star Trek VI. And I just dearly wish that my father could have been alive to see that and see his son in command of that starship, boldly going, and to save that aging captain of the Enterprise. If it hadn't been for Captain Sulu, his story would have ended. I love that opening with a cup of green tea proudly being sipped by me, and I have that teacup on my bookshelf at home. Again, this is a gift that Gene has given us, this kind of longevity and continuity, but it's the genius of Gene Roddenberry that brought us all together with that vision of his. We have lived long, much longer than we ever expected, and we have prospered in so many enriching ways.